Hey, it's me again. I'm back. And in the continuing trend of my past videos, I'm in yet another location. I had a couple of people ask me where my last two videos were shot, and they were in my house. One in the guest bedroom and one in my actual bedroom. And now I'm in a completely different place. I'm in the old Lovely Dozen Studios. I say old because we're getting ready for a move, so it's kind of, which is actually kind of fitting because my topic for today is uncomfortable conversations, and letting our owner know that we were leaving was one of those. But I kind of, the reason this is something that's been on my mind lately is because I've been having a lot of uncomfortable conversations lately, but I have been enjoying them. I've been reveling in them and I've been learning from them. And I thought that maybe it might be useful to talk a little bit about why I revel in them, why I think they're valuable and worth having. So it's sort of a generic topic today, not necessarily race specific, but could be tied to any conversations that you find yourself having that are uncomfortable. And going against tradition of my last two videos, this one is completely just, I'm spontaneously thinking of this on the fly. Past ones, I tend to be someone who likes to write things out and sort of like get it out of my brain and onto a piece of paper, study it, and then talk to the camera. You know, sort of like have that in my mind and then converse openly about it after I've had a chance to sort of put it out there and think about it. But this one, literally, I just was sitting at the other side of the studio because we're going to have a class here in about 20 minutes, and I thought to myself, I want to talk about this thing, and I'm going to film myself talking about this thing. And then I decided to sit down and start filming myself talking about this thing. And now I hear the sound of somebody else coming into the studio, and I wonder if maybe she'll come in here and talk about this thing with me. Hey, Amaya.
Yeah.
You want to come in here?
Sure.
I'm filming another vlog, just sort of on a whim. And I thought maybe you might want to join me for it. Yay! Come sit on the floor with me. I'm talking about uncomfortable conversations.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah, my right? Yay! Okay, so my subheading for the thought of this idea is uncomfortable conversations, getting in, getting out, and keeping it clean. Right? Okay, so here's
awesome.
And I was just saying that this is contrary to how I usually do these in the sense that I usually script them first, and then I like think about it and junk. And I'm not really thinking about this. I'm just talking about it. So I figured you can sort of chime in wherever you feel like, yeah, you have valuable. This is so much fun. Okay, so the one thought that I have had that I was like, I definitely have to say this is when you're getting into an uncomfortable conversation, you have to approach it, or at least this is what I think. You have to approach it with the mindset that your desire for the outcome of that conversation is to learn something and not necessarily to prove a point. Would you agree with that?
I suppose.
Yeah?
I mean, I guess it all depends on what your conversation is about.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there could totally be situations where your uncomfortable conversation might be about you having to make a point. Maybe not prove, but definitely make a point and make it clear.
Yeah. So maybe it's that you have to be willing to go in and leave the conversation with a greater understanding, maybe?
Yes.
So not necessarily to learn something, but that both parties leave the conversation with a greater understanding of each other. Yeah. Not necessarily to prove a point, but you might need to make one.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a little bit longer than like that's less easy to package than my original thought, but it's better that way, I think. Because that was my first thought, is that if you're thinking about getting into an uncomfortable conversation, that there has to be this mindset of, I want to understand something. I want to come out of it understanding more. So other tips for getting in.
Oh gosh,
other things that come to your mind.
I'm pretty. What's the word I'm looking for? Non-confrontational.
Which is
because that's kind of how I am. But I mean, you do still have to have those conversations, no matter how non-confrontational you are, and it's just. It's a matter of really knowing where you stand in my brain. That's the thing. If I'm going to go into any kind of conversation where I have to make it clear, because we're having this conversation obviously because something isn't working right, something isn't going as it should be. So I have to be able to know exactly where I'm standing, and I have to be able to communicate why it's not working, what is happening that's falling apart.
Yes.
Yep.
So I think Yeah. So it's when you, okay, so we've got 2 points then.
Boom.
For getting into an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah.
A, understand that it's necessary. And B, understand that you have to understand things when you leave it. Like you have to have, yeah, it has to be growth. Yeah, that the conversation has to, I like that. Okay, so yeah, understand that uncomfortable conversations are necessary and require growth.
Yes.
Oh,
require growth.
I like it. Okay, so getting out.
Ooh,
right.
That's the tough one.
Yeah.
A lot of that really depends on how it goes over.
Yeah.
Because it could go over well, relatively.
Yeah.
And then getting out of it is you're done. The end. Conversation is over.
Recap and exit. Yeah. But when it doesn't go well,
that's trickier.
Yeah, because they're like
much harder.
Yeah, because like in my first video, I talked about that idea of being like forced out, you know, and in those conversations, all that you can say is, "Here's the last thing I can offer you.
Yeah,
I'm feeling unable to continue this conversation because it's not productive, so I'm gonna go. But here are my parting words," you know.
Right, and it's the same idea of knowing exactly where you're standing on whatever it is that's being discussed.
Yeah.
So that if you have to leave that situation without having some kind of full resolution where both parties are like, yes, I understand what's going on and I'm happy with this, because you might not, and that's okay. You might have to leave saying something more like, I understand, like we're going to come back to this later. We're still going to have to talk about this, but this is what I'm trying to get through to you. Here it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's valuable too. Like to say that the conversation doesn't have to end. It just can't continue in its current state.
Now.
Yeah, it can't continue in its current state. So you can either table it and we'll come back to this later and here's what I need you to think about before we come back to it, or I have to exit entirely and here are my final thoughts to you. Because sometimes, sometimes it's somebody that you don't know and you're never going to see
come
again.
Back to the situation.
But then, I mean, that sort of ties us into the whole keeping it clean thing, right? Because there are conversations that you will do your utmost to keep clean, and somebody will still find a way to throw mud at you.
Of course.
And there's no avoiding that. But what do you do to keep your what do you do to keep your uncomfortable conversations as clean as possible?
As clean as possible. Well, I would say it's a great question. I mean, and because it comes back to my whole being non-confrontational, so I try to approach things from a very middle ground. And that way, because as soon as you start to phrase things in such a way that people feel like they're being attacked or that it's all on them, they're going to clam up and be done with whatever it is. They don't even care. They're done. And so you've got to be able to approach it in a way that even though you're coming into it with knowing where you're standing on this issue and knowing how you need things to be resolved so that you can feel comfortable, you also have to be willing to phrase it openly enough to say that maybe there is some room I can give you, or maybe there's something that I can do.
Yeah.
As long as my basic needs are met, you know?
Yeah, yep. Because you have to look out for yourself in that sense. But there was something that I read somewhere that actually connects to that really well, which is if you're going to make an argument against something, you first have to rephrase that argument and make sure you understand it and present it so clearly that the person you're arguing with goes, yeah, I actually wish I'd phrased it that way. You know?
Debate strategies,
strategies. Yeah. So it's like it's a matter of reflecting what you've heard and making sure that you understand, because then again, that's that understanding, that you understand what's been said to you so that you can rephrase it and then do what you were saying, which is basically just say, I still have needs in this conversation. I still have needs in the topic of what we're discussing, but here's what I can offer you. Let's learn from each other. Let's understand from each other.
And I think that's important. And you can, I mean, also approaching it, I guess, sort of, battery.
What? I don't care. Keep recording.
Approaching it in such a way that you're being, I don't know if flexible is really the word I want, but flexible.
Being open.
Just being, and kind of coming from it from a very, not necessarily professional or detached, but being able to not dump your emotions into everything that you're saying. Because sometimes that's just as ineffective as if you come in, oh my God, Natasha, it's all your fault.
That's not helpful. It's
not helpful either. Like, and
it's
I'm not
balance,
saying,
right?
Yeah, I'm not saying you have to be detached, but you have to be able to look somewhat objectively anyway
Yeah.
at the situation that you're trying to resolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we were to try and like sum up our big three things here, right? So get in with the understanding that it is necessary for you to get into the conversation, and that it requires learning. Yeah, that you're going to learn something, that you're going to understand something.
Growth. That was
growth.
the way we phrased
Yeah.
it.
Yep. So get in with those understandings. Get out with the integrity of your needs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like the integrity of your needs to leave the conversation because it's not productive anymore, while still being open to either continuing the conversation or letting the person know you still have my respect, but I'm out. And keeping it clean by, well, just staying true to your needs, like we said for the getting out of the conversation. If your need is for you to continue the conversation, you think you can do it safely, do. If your need is to exit the conversation, do that.
Yeah.
But be mindful of your needs when you're in the conversation, and be mindful of the other person's needs, or what your perception of their needs are too, so that you're reframing to them the argument they're giving you and trying to, again, find that mutual understanding and learning, so you both leave having learned something. Yes. Compromise. Win-win, right?
Yeah.
Nobody has to give too much. No one has to compromise too much. Everybody wins something. Thanks for being part of this conversation, Amaya. It makes me so happy. AmayaDances, everybody. You can find her on YouTube and Tumblr and everywhere.
And you'll put a link in the description.
It's
going to be down there.
It's going to be down there.
I'm
We're going
teaching
to put
you
a link in
things.
I love it. She's been vlogging longer than I have, so this is great fun.
Yay!
But yay, friends. Yay, uncomfortable conversations. Have them.
With friends,
maybe.
I don't
Start
know.
there. And then move on to people that maybe you don't know. But be mindful and be respectful.
Yes.
Just be nice.
Just be nice.